In September of 1991, two German hikers named Helmut and Erika Simon were trekking through the high Ötztal Alps near the border of Austria and Italy. At an altitude of over 10,000 feet, they stumbled across what looked like a human body, half buried in ice and rock. At first, they assumed it was the tragic end of a modern mountaineer, maybe someone who had perished in recent decades. But the reality was far stranger. When authorities arrived, they discovered that the body wasn't a few years old. It wasn't even a few centuries old. It was more than 5,000 years old. Perfectly preserved in ice was a man from the Copper Age, a relic of prehistory frozen in time. He would be known to the world as Ötzi the Iceman, named after the mountain range where he was found. The discovery caused a sensation. Ötzi wasn't just bones and fragments, he was whole. His skin, organs, and even the contents of his stomach were intact. His clothes were stitched from goat, sheep, and cow hides. His shoes were stuffed with grass for insulation. He carried a remarkable copper axe, making him the oldest human ever found with metal tools. His tattoos, over 60 of them, were not decorative, but located on joints and along the spine, suggesting they might have been used as a kind of primitive acupuncture to relieve pain. Through Ötzi, archaeologists could peer directly into the life of a man who lived before the pyramids were built. They learned what he ate, dried ibex meat and grains. They learned what he wore, what weapons he carried, and even that he suffered from arthritis, Lyme disease, and clogged arteries. He was, quite literally, the best preserved time traveler ever discovered. But Ötzi came with a shadow. From the moment he was pulled out of the ice, whispers of a curse began to swirl. It wasn't long before people connected to his discovery began dying under strange circumstances. The first was Rainer Henn, the forensic pathologist who handled Ötzi's body with his bare hands during removal. Within a year, he was killed in a sudden car crash while on his way to give a lecture about the Iceman. Then there was Helmut Simon, one of the hikers who first spotted Ötzi. In 2004, more than a decade after his famous find, he disappeared during a hike in the same Alps. After a frantic search, his body was discovered, buried under fresh snow. Next was Kurt Fritz, the mountain guide who had led scientists safely to the discovery site and organized the dangerous recovery operation. Fritz was later killed in an avalanche. Even the journalists weren't safe. Rainer Hösel, who filmed the mummy for a documentary, died suddenly of a brain tumor at just 47. Perhaps the most chilling case involved Konrad Spindler, one of the leading archaeologists who studied Ötzi. Spindler laughed at the idea of a curse and even publicly mocked the superstition. But in the early 2000s, he was diagnosed with a debilitating illness, multiple sclerosis, that eventually led to his death. In all, at least 7 people connected closely to Ötzi's body, those who touched him, studied him, or filmed him, met untimely ends. None of the deaths were particularly extraordinary on their own, but together they formed a pattern that was hard to ignore. Newspapers around the world pounced. "The Iceman's deadly curse," they declared. Suddenly, Ötzi wasn't just a prehistoric mummy. He was a figure of supernatural dread, his discovery tinged with fear. The legend of the curse was born. Skeptics, of course, argue the opposite. They point out that hundreds of people have worked with Ötzi in some way. Archaeologists, lab technicians, conservators, museum staff. The vast majority are alive and well. In statistical terms, the deaths of 7 people over more than a decade hardly prove a supernatural curse. After all, mountaineering, avalanches, and illness are common risks. But believers insist that the cluster of accidents is too unusual, especially since so many of those who died had direct, hands-on contact with the mummy. And the human imagination, fueled by centuries of legends about curses, like the curse of the pharaohs surrounding King Tutankhamun's tomb, was quick to fill in the blanks. And then there's the mystery of Ötzi's own death. For years, it was assumed he had died of exposure, trapped in a snowstorm. But in 2001, scans revealed something shocking: an arrowhead lodged in his left shoulder. He had been shot in the back. He also had cuts and bruises and evidence of a blow to the head. Suddenly, Ötzi wasn't just a man frozen in the Alps. He was a murder victim. Why was he killed? Some theorize he was ambushed in a violent conflict. Others think he was betrayed by his own people. His final hours show he had eaten a large meal, then fled into the mountains, where his attackers caught up with him. He may have died bleeding on the glacier, his body soon hidden beneath ice and snow. 5,000 years later, his story emerged, along with the mystery of his fate. Today, Ötzi rests in a custom-built cold chamber at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. He lies in a glass case chilled to the exact temperature of the glacier that preserved him. Millions of visitors have come to see him, pressing their faces to the glass, staring into the leathery features of a man who lived before written history. He has become both a tourist attraction and an icon of archaeology. And yet the curse continues to haunt his legend. Even visitors sometimes whisper about it as they peer into his icy tomb. Is it coincidence that those who disturbed him faced tragedy? Or does Ötzi carry with him the same warning told across cultures, that the dead should not be disturbed? In truth, the curse of Ötzi says as much about us as it does about him. Humans crave meaning. When accidents and deaths pile up, we connect them into a story. We seek patterns, even when they may not exist. At the same time, our fascination with curses reflects something deeper: our unease with death itself. The idea that disturbing the resting place of the dead could unleash consequences is both a warning and a comfort, a reminder that some things are beyond our control. But whether the curse is real or imagined, there is no denying that Ötzi has changed the way we understand the past. He is not just an archaeological discovery. He is a man whose life, death, and afterlife continue to speak to us. He bridges the gap between the ancient and the modern, reminding us that even 5,000 years ago, humans loved, fought, ate, suffered, and died just as we do today. Maybe the real curse of Ötzi is not in the deaths of a few men. Maybe the real curse is that his discovery forces us to confront our own mortality. To look into his leathery face is to see ourselves, preserved not in ice, but in memory. And it raises a haunting question. How will we be remembered when our time is up? Whether cursed or not, Ötzi remains frozen in history, his mystery intact, his presence undeniable. And as long as his story is told, his legend will never melt away. Comment, like, and subscribe for more stories about curses, mysteries, and the unexplained.